I'm criticizing some of the biggest, most powerful companies in the United States, and they're tough, and they don't like it. They've been very personally critical of me, and on a recent book tour that I was on, there were clearly people planted in the audience. There were demonstrators who were paid to hand out leaflets attacking me. They tried to prevent me from visiting schools and speaking to school children. There were letter-writing campaigns and messages sent to the principals and headmasters that I was an improper person to be visiting schools. And I find that objectionable, but it hasn't stopped me from doing what I'm doing. These companies have so much money, and they get their point of view across every single day in ads on the radio and TV and the newspapers. They should be able to deal with a little bit of criticism. That's what freedom and democracy is about. I write books, and when someone writes a review of my book that's critical of me, I don't start harassing them on the internet, and I don't try to get them fired from their job. And these companies should grow up and realize that maybe they can learn something from their critics, or maybe it's good to engage in a dialogue. But their mentality is really about control, total control. So compared to other writers who've had horrible things done to them, so far I've gotten off pretty easy. Knock on wood. The book is a work of investigative journalism. It's entirely factual. It's heavily footnoted and annotated, and it's a history of the industry and of food production. It's a wide-ranging factual book. The film is a drama. It's fictional. It's a Richard Linklater film, so it has his particular voice and sensibility, and it's really set in it's a very specific setting, a small town in Colorado, and the interlocking lives of people in that town. So they're very, very different things. What they share is a title, some themes, and hopefully a spirit that is iconoclastic and trying to look below the surface of American society. When I was writing Fast Food Nation, I didn't imagine it as a vehicle for Bruce Willis. It's a work of investigative journalism, and the idea of doing a fictional film based on it is not obvious at all. A documentary would be a much more logical kind of film to make, and I worked hard to get a documentary made on the book, and that didn't work out for a variety of reasons. I was approached by Jeremy Thomas, a British independent film producer, about doing a fictional film based on it. And I wasn't sure how that would work. I wasn't sure if it was a good idea. It was only after meeting with Richard Linklater in Austin and talking about it and thinking about how it might work that we realized there could be a good idea there. There's a novel that we both read, Winesburg, Ohio, by Sherwood Anderson. It's a great American novel written in the 1920s, and it's about a little town in Ohio and these lives. And by the end of the novel, you have a very strong portrait, not only of that place, but of America in that moment. So using that as an inspiration, we had the glimmerings of what the film could be. But it took a year or two of talking about it and thinking about it and getting together before we really decided to do this. And Rick and I both felt we didn't want to do something that was crap, and there was no need for me to have a film based on the book. The book did so much better than I ever thought a book of mine would do. So it was once there was this solid framework that seemed like it could be interesting, and once Rick was clear about he felt passionately about doing this, that's when it became much more plausible. But it took quite a while, and I didn't sign over the rights to my book until it was apparent that this could be something interesting to do. If this had been a novel, very often, and I started out as a screenwriter before I was a journalist, often the author is the worst person to adapt a novel, because you're literally like cutting off your own limbs. There are whole characters that have to go and subplots that have to go, and a very good screenplay adaptation of a novel is a really tough condensation of characters and plot. My book is a work of investigative journalism, and there are no characters from the book, no people from the book who are in the film. So it's a very, very different process. And what we tried to do was think about who would be living in this town and represent them honestly and truthfully. And to the degree there are any issues or political arguments or bigger economic themes, we try to be tough and insist that they spring truthfully from those lies and not be imposed by the author as a way of speechifying. So there are political talks and there are economic, remarks made, but hopefully they feel true to the characters who are saying them and not like the author, inserting a little soapbox speech. But by deciding to set this in a small town, it was a conscious decision to set aside the book and not feel bound by the book and not feel you had to do anything literalistic about the book. And it was a real pleasure working with Rick on this. And I must be the only writer in the last 5 years who's, liked the film that a filmmaker based on his book and actually enjoyed the process of making it. I have friends who are writers who had terrible experiences when their work is adapted, and I have friends who are screenwriters who, aren't on speaking terms with the director, and that hasn't been the case.